In the vast, unforgiving expanse of Siberia, where the wind howls and the earth holds secrets of iron and steel, a story was forged. A story not just of a man, but of an empire built from the ashes of a fallen superpower. This is the story of Alexei Mordashov, a name synonymous with Russia's industrial might, a visionary who saw opportunity where others saw only ruin. His journey begins not in a boardroom, but in a small steel town, with a simple dream and an unyielding will. Imagine a young man, the son of two steel mill workers, growing up in the shadow of smokestacks. Cherpovets, his hometown, was the heart of Soviet steel production. For many, the mill was a destiny, a life of hard labor passed down through generations. But for young Alexei, it was a classroom. He watched his parents toil, learned the language of molten metal, and felt the pulse of the industry in his very bones. He excelled in school, his sharp mind drawn to the complex world of economics. He was driven, not by a thirst for wealth, but by a deep curiosity about how things worked, and more importantly, how they could work better. He earned a place at the prestigious Leningrad Engineering and Economics Institute, a world away from the familiar grime of the factory floor. As he studied, the world around him was on the brink of collapse. The Soviet Union, a titan that had stood for 70 years, was crumbling. The old certainties were dissolving, and a tidal wave of chaos and uncertainty was about to sweep across the nation. For most, it was a time of fear. For Alexei Mordashov, returning to the Cherpovets steel mill as a senior economist in 1988, it was the beginning of everything. He was a young man in an old world, a world that was dying right before his eyes. And as the storm of change gathered, he would have to make a choice: be swept away by it or learn to fly above it. The early 1990s were a trial by fire for Russia. The collapse of the Soviet Union unleashed economic shockwaves that crippled industries. The Cherpovets steel mill, once a symbol of state power, was now on its knees. Production plummeted, wages went unpaid for months, and the future looked bleak. The old guard, the factory directors accustomed to the Soviet system, were lost. They didn't understand the new rules of capitalism, this strange and brutal game of survival. But Alexei, now the finance director at just 27 years old, saw it differently. He saw the storm not as an end, but as a chance to rebuild. While others panicked, he studied. He devoured books on Western business practices, privatization, and market economics. He understood that to survive, the mill had to transform. It could no longer depend on the state. It had to stand on its own. He proposed a bold, almost audacious plan: privatization. He advised the old factory director to use the new voucher system to buy up the company's shares before outsiders could. It was a risky move, a gamble in a game where the rules were still being written. The director, wary of this new world, agreed, but it was Alexei who orchestrated the strategy. Using the company's funds, he created investment funds that bought up the workers' privatization vouchers. Many workers, desperate for cash, sold their shares for a fraction of their worth, unaware of the gold they held in their hands. Mordashov, using his own savings and loans, also bought shares, accumulating a significant stake. It was a controversial period, a time of ruthless acquisition that would later draw criticism. But in the chaos of post-Soviet Russia, it was how empires were born. He wasn't just acquiring shares. He was fighting for the very survival of the mill and the thousands of jobs it represented. By 1996, he had outmaneuvered the old director and, through a series of calculated moves, became the CEO and controlling shareholder of the company he would rename Cybersol, meaning Northern Steel. He had reached the summit, but the view was terrifying. He was the young captain of a sinking ship. He inherited an outdated, inefficient behemoth, bleeding money and burdened by a Soviet-era mentality. He faced immense resistance from within, from workers and managers who distrusted his new methods. The challenges were immense, the pressure suffocating. It was a moment that would have broken most people, but like an eagle that uses the storm's updraft to soar, Mordashov used the pressure to climb higher. He saw the path forward with absolute clarity: modernize, streamline, and conquer. The era of survival was over. The era of the Iron Visionary had begun. With control of Severstal firmly in his grasp, Alexei Mordashov unleashed a revolution. He wasn't just a manager. He was a builder, a strategist with a vision that stretched far beyond the factory gates. He knew that to compete on the global stage, Severstal had to be more than just a relic of the Soviet past. It had to become a lean, modern, and formidable force. He began a ruthless campaign of modernization. He slashed the bloated workforce, cutting tens of thousands of jobs, a painful but necessary step to save the company from bankruptcy. He invested heavily in new technology, replacing antiquated open-hearth furnaces with state-of-the-art converters and continuous casters. He traveled the world, studying the best steelmakers in Japan, Germany, and the United States, bringing back not just technology, but a new philosophy of efficiency and quality. His ambition was relentless. He wasn't content with just dominating the Russian market. He set his sights on the world. In the early 2000s, Severstal began a massive international expansion. He acquired struggling steel plants in the United States, like the Rouge Steel Company in Michigan, a legendary but decaying industrial giant. He saw value where others saw rust. He turned these failing assets around, injecting capital, technology, and his signature management style. He expanded into coal mining to secure his supply chain and into gold mining to diversify his portfolio. He built a vertically integrated empire, a self-sufficient machine that controlled every step of the process, from the iron ore in the ground to the finished steel coil delivered to the customer. He transformed a single, struggling mill into Severstal, a global steel and mining conglomerate, one of the most profitable in the world. He became one of Russia's wealthiest men, a billionaire titan of industry. But his impact went beyond balance sheets. He had saved a city. The Cherpovets steel mill, which once faced extinction, was now the thriving heart of the community, providing stable jobs and a future for a new generation. He invested in the city's infrastructure, schools, and hospitals. He had proven that from the ruins of the old, a new, stronger future could be built. He had faced the storm of economic collapse and emerged not just unscathed, but more powerful than ever. He had shown the world the sheer force of a single, focused vision. The story of Alexei Mordashov is a saga written iron and fire. It's a journey that teaches us profound lessons about vision, resilience, and the nature of power. The first lesson is the power of seeing what others don't. In the wreckage of the Soviet economy, where most saw despair, he saw a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He had the foresight to understand the new rules of the game and the courage to play it. It reminds us that our greatest opportunities often lie hidden within our greatest challenges. When the world is in chaos, don't just see the storm. Look for the winds that will help you rise. The second lesson is the discipline of execution. A vision without action is just a dream. Mordashov's success wasn't just about a brilliant idea. It was about the relentless, day-by-day execution of that idea. It was about making tough, unpopular decisions. It was about the grueling work of transforming an old culture piece by piece. True achievement is not born in a single moment of inspiration, but forged in the fires of consistent, disciplined effort. It teaches us that to build something lasting, we must be willing to do the hard, unglamorous work that others avoid. Finally, his story is a lesson in adaptation. The world is in a constant state of flux. Industries rise and fall, empires crumble, and rules change. Mordashov thrived because he was a master of adaptation. He learned from the West, but applied those lessons to the unique realities of Russia. He built a global empire but never lost sight of his local roots. Like an eagle adjusting its wings to the changing currents of the air, he constantly adjusted his strategy to the changing economic and political winds. He teaches us that resilience is not about being rigid and unmoving, but about being flexible and ready to pivot. In every life, storms will come. There will be times when the sky grows dark, when the winds of change threaten to tear you down, and when the future feels uncertain. In those moments, remember the story forged in the heart of Siberia. Remember the man who saw a future in the ruins of the past. Your circumstances do not define you. Your past does not dictate your future. What defines you is your vision, your discipline, and your ability to adapt. You have within you the strength to face any storm. You have the potential to not just survive it, but to use it to soar to heights you never thought possible. No matter how dark the sky may seem, you were born to soar above it. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Until next time, keep believing in your vision.